Hello everybody, I'm Daisy. I'm going to host the rest of this track today. So now we're going to have a panel discussion on international collaboration and success comes from global perspective from these lovely people here next to me.
Thank you, Daisy. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So really delighted to have you all here, especially because the panel that we have today are veterans of the industry. I won't say how many combined years, but we're really hoping to share the international perspective that they all have and also the experience that they have over a long period of time as the international games industry has developed. My hope is that what you take away from this is some little nuggets of what what might give you some inspiration and some confidence for running your own studios or making your own decisions, or as a developer what you might want to achieve, but also at the end of this to want to talk to any of them to find out more about their experience, their rich experience. So I'm going to hand it over to each of them, let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about how they started, when they started, and what they're doing right now. Dennis.
Hi, my name is Dennis. I'm co-founder of Nightmarket Games. First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here at this time. I know it's lunchtime, so I appreciate everyone being here at this time. I co-founded Nightmarket Games in 2017 after previously having worked at Nerdcore Entertainment and DHX Media building games for cartoon and entertainment properties. So over the years we've gone more global, and now we license IPs and brands to make games, collaborating with a lot of international companies for some diverse brands.
Amazing. Thank you, Dennis. James?
Sure, let's see if I can. Is that, oh, it is working. Yeah, hi everybody, James Hursthouse. I moved to Vancouver in 2010. So actually I can tell the story around BC and all of that from the perspective of moving there to actually start a game studio. My career in games started about 10 years earlier than that, around 2000. I was in Japan and sort of sidestepped into the industry, although I'd always been a gamer, but I ended up teaching at the time, the CEO of Nexon English every morning, and from that ended up doing international business development for Nexon. And GDC 2003 was my first conference. First talk ever was 10 Reasons You Should Never Make an MMO, and I guess I've been trying to do that ever since. 2010, moved to Canada, started a company called Hursthouse Interactive, and we grew that to about 180 people. So, we have the experience of growing a large studio in BC, and restructured that in 2016. And since then, I've sort of been doing independent Lone Ranger consulting for a bunch of different things. A lot of infrastructure, games as a service, a lot of content, most recently Web3 and blockchain. And right now I have a little independent consultancy called Greenstone, and we're basically just putting deals together, again, across that whole kind of spectrum of infrastructure, technology, content, primarily games, but some other stuff, digital healthcare and things like that. So.
Hi everybody, thanks for being here. Is this working?
Yeah, it's working.
So I'm John Johnson. I've been in the industry longer than this guy, since I think '96. I started at EA Canada when I think EA was one of 3 studios in Vancouver at the time. I think there's hundreds now.
I thought you were going to say the stock price.
I moved on to Relic Entertainment after that, and I was started there fairly early in the company and worked on 3 titles. The last game I worked on there was Company of Heroes. We successfully had a good exit with that company. I can't remember the year, but with THQ. And after that, I moved on to Start Smoking Gun, and I developed that and ran it for 17 and a half years. And we did a successful exit of that company in 2022 with Keyword Studios. And I've recently retired from there, semi-retired. And we developed a game there that we kind of moved out of the company called Phobies, and it's doing really well. And so I'm running that company now, and I'm just in the process of building that into a kind of new studio. And I've left Smoking Gun in the hands of this guy here.
So we'll go from there. So I'm Jacob Barrrows. I'm the executive producer at SGI, or Smoking Gun Interactive. And I started in the games industry in 2007, EA. Also worked at Ubisoft, mostly did kind of AAA console games, and then moved into the mobile market because that's where a lot of the money was going. I've been working at SGI for 7 years, and yeah, we've been kind of building great games for partners like Microsoft and Netflix and a bunch of others. So.
How big are you guys now?
We're about 65-ish, yeah.
Okay, so what I really like about this panel is that there shows a lot of courageousness within the industry to go it on your own when you've run big teams, to move across platforms, to start in studios. And I really would like to understand, and maybe start with you, John. What do you think, when you started in 1996, games were made by a studio, in a studio. What do you think has created this, this move to have to utilize international collaborations? Like, what has been driving that to where it is now?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it is just, you know, where games went from then to now. Your team sizes were fairly small back then, you know, 20, 30, 40 people. I think FIFA was the biggest team I was ever on. That was maybe 70 people at the time, which was an anomaly, but, you know. But, you know, teams, like, the games just continue to grow, and the content that's needed continues to grow. And, you know, look at Ubisoft, look at how many people work on, you know, on those titles. It would be insane to have a studio in one place that would have 2,000-3,000 people working on one title. So I think that's probably a big part of it. I think COVID helped push everything into remote work, and then I think that's changed the industry forever. I think there's a lot of, you know, you don't have to hire everybody in one place anymore, and I think that model is working, and
Yeah.
I think that's going to continue.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, going to continue. Jacob, you've got a team of, like you said, about 60 people. Just help us understand, first of all, like how you guys are spread out, and what are you looking for when you are working with different people, different aspects of the game developments, and different customers or clients across the world? Like, why is having an international spread so important for the success of the studio?
Yeah, so there's a lot to that question.
Yeah, I know,
A lot of
but I should
aspects
have wrote
to
it
go
down.
there. But I would say that one of the kind of key things for us with working with groups across borders is just really about having the right setup. And we've kind of learned this over time as we have worked with more outsourcing or, you know, co-developments, et cetera, that really, you know, key to having success there is having the right people in place and together, and looking at more of that additional support that we're getting internationally, or those groups that we're working with. We're looking at more of the scale of work versus maybe more of the leadership and proving out the actual work that we want to create. So along that lines, I think, again, it's key to have a core group that can collaborate and work together and set the standards. And then from there, work with your partners to essentially make sure that you have very clear goals, clear definition of what you're trying to do together, and how you're doing that. So that helps us kind of have a successful delivery on that side. Now, working with clients internationally as well, because there's multiple parts here, the big thing about having that diversity of people, so we have some people who are over in Spain and things like that, and we have, you know, people who are in Vancouver on our main group there. It allows us to support clients across the world because of that. So sometimes they'll have concerns about, we need to keep our servers up at all times. So what can we do there? Well, we can have our Vancouver group look after the servers during certain time range. Then we have another group in Spain who can look over the servers after that point and be there to make sure that we can sustain those services across all the time zones as well. So,
yeah. So what I'm hearing is that stability comes from having a core team, and then the internationalization just adds to that. The capabilities of that, whether it be taking advantage of time zones, but also people's capacity and really building on the strengths of a core team.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's costing too, right? Like, as we've talked about, the team sizes have really increased, right? And when you look at the packaged good product world, the prices of games are not really going up. So as your costs go up and the price point of games stays kind of flat, you need something to kind of give in the industry, right? Yeah. So that's where, some of that spreading across the world is just also the need to still be able to create the experiences that people expect, but at a price point that's also reasonable and profitable. So
yeah. Thank you. Dennis, your studio deals with a lot of IP, international IP. It would be helpful to understand, when you are assessing IP to develop games, how important is it, the international view? And then how do you actually make that happen? Because there's an international market and games are global. So, I don't know, did I ask that question clear enough?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thanks for teeing that up for me. Our experience is working with IPs and brands, and a big reason why we left our parent company to go independent was so you can't just work with a single company or a single region for IPs and brands. It's so global now. Like, tell me, what are the odds that in a pre-Netflix world that one of the most watched genres on TV in North America would be South Korean dramas, right?
Right.
You have that international expansion now, so oftentimes you need to have that global perspective working with IPs and brands, because not only are you trying to build off of their existing brand efforts, you're also helping them build their brand in a different market that they're not already in or not familiar with. So having the understanding of how your market works too, when building a game for, say, a Western audience that's based on a brand that originated in China or IP that originated in Japan, it's very important to know the international language and how you work with them to understand our space while we work with them to build out their brand in a way that seems, I guess you would say, could be accepted, more acceptable and more mainstream in the Western space.
So a follow-up question to that is, how have you built up that? How's your experience give your clients that confidence? How have you done that? What makes your clients confident to work with you?
Oftentimes it's showing that you know the mobile space better. A lot of IPs and brands, they work in the physical space. And our experience with those companies is that they aren't familiar with the rapid iteration times in games. They're used to approving, say, product language that goes onto a toy box or some other label that is forever. And we have to educate them into how we need to run A/B tests on App Store descriptions and improve optimization. So they come to value our expertise in that space, and they see as a value add because we're bringing them understanding of the space that they don't normally have when they're working with other brand merchandise. It's not always digital for them, right? It's going to be physical product most of the time.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. I think confidence is a massive space. James, when it comes to, your expertise kind of falls into different spaces, and I know that's a lot to do with your curious nature. One thing that's really would be interesting to understand is when you're dealing with international partners and you're creating collaborations, how do you create the confidence for the risk in finance with investors? You know, how are you mitigating those concerns?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting question because in many ways, a kind of network of international partners that you've either used before or they come very highly recommended is in many ways a good way to offset the risk, financial risks. You know, again, you know, going back to when we had Roadhouse with 180 people, you know, you take a slight misstep, that's a very big payroll, right? Whereas now, I think, you know, it's feasible to make a game if you're a team of 3, 5 core folks, right? And what I think is interesting is, you know, we were just talking about this earlier with Christian, the number of shops that are around now who specialize in engineering or art. And so depending on what phase you're at in the game, you can go and find the best talent in the world for a specific discipline, right? Mm-hmm. Use that team, ideally because you've used them before. And then in terms of the pipeline, once that sort of core engineering piece is done, the pressure to find the next gig, find the next gig isn't necessarily there, right? So for me, I think it's an interesting time now because, you know, again, if you've had that track record of working with these partners, I think the reliability there, and obviously there's benefits to having the integrated studio as well, but to me, you know, there's pluses and minuses. And I think part of it is just simply that over the last, you know, like if you think about it, like in Vancouver, I think it was 1981 that Don Matrick took, you know, Evolution to Tony Williams Sr., and that was when the games industry started. So it's still only, what, 40 years? And we've come an amazingly long way, but, you know, 20 years ago, sort of the talent around the world wasn't necessarily there, but it is now. But I think Dennis's point about, you know, best practices and just this cross-pollination of working together has meant that the rising tide has floated all boats. And so it is easier now, I think, to have that mind and matter and then just hand select these partners that actually offset risk in many ways because they just do that job in every day, you know, in and out. Yeah, so I mean, it's just, I guess, a fact of modern life where we want to be using these resources because they're proven. Right?
Yeah, so actually that's really helpful. Say there's a studio out here that's doing work for hire or looking to co-develop something or collaboration. How do they position themselves so they can compete? You know, and I'll ask this to anyone here, like, what is going to give them that edge to say, you know, we're ready, we're good as an international partnership? Because it is a global industry now.
Let me just do sort of 2 more seconds on that. I mean, there are companies out there now that are specializing on very, very niche components, right?
Okay.
And I think so specialization would be my answer because then I think you have a line of customers waiting for that specialization.
I would agree. I think I think when we started Smoking Gun, we were focused on strategy because we had come from Company Heroes. We came from a strategy studio, and I think that's, you know, having a specialized talent is definitely key. I mean, if you're just going to be a studio that's jack of all trades, and you don't really have anything out there that it's harder to sell yourself, right? So having being specialized, I think, is important, for sure.
Okay, so then on a follow-up question, because I really believe that people do business. So considering anybody's here, they're all at an international game developers conference, they're meeting people. You have a niche studio, you have a niche skill. How do you create business as a person creating business internationally? Like, how do you make those connections? Is it at conferences like this? I mean, if you think about an international scaling up of business and connections, what are the skills that people would really need to home in on a personal level? And how, I mean, you guys all do international business. What are you finding your personal skills are, and how have they grown in order to do international work?
You got to be good at sales.
Sorry, say again?
You got to be good at sales. You
good at sales.
Be passionate. You have to show your passion to your clients. I mean, that's for sure number one.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of door knocking. I'm sure everybody here is experiencing that. There's a lot of money's gone from the industry in the last couple of years. It's been tough.
Yeah.
So you got to lock on a lot of doors sometimes, and it's tough. But if you're not passionate and you don't, I think people see that, and that's what sells.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what gives you the confidence to start up a new studio, right? And why everyone keeps going. Jacob, you're running a studio. How do you keep developing business from a strategic point of view as opposed to just a personal point of view? So as a studio.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of like, once you kind of have good partnerships in place, you utilize a lot of those, right? You're looking at how you can expand those out, what your partner's needs are. Knowing your partner's business as well is just pivotal, right? Because that's going to give you the opportunity to expand those opportunities by being ahead of what they're going to be asking for, starting those conversations off. Again, that a lot of things come down to confidence building with your partners, right? And when your partners feel that you know their business at maybe as well as they do, or or somewhere close, they feel a lot better about putting those pieces in your hands, right? Yeah. Because they know that that you're on it, you know what they need, and you're going to be able to deliver it. Because at the end of the day, like that's one of the other key things is that you've delivered, right? That's what that's what all partners are looking for, that they can rely on this relationship, that you're going to give them what they need, right? So past history of delivering is important.
Okay, so I know that there's a lot of people here from an international arena. James, what support creates that level of being able to interact, create the industry interactions? I mean, because you guys are all veterans, you have those partnerships, you have those experience, you're building on that foundation. But what support is there, and how, or rather, what should people look at for the support in order to make these international connections, to continuing to compete, to continuing their studios, so that they're not threatened by using a global arena?
Well, of course, you know, provincial and federal government support is always amazing. Thanks, Rhoda. And actually, it is true, though. I mean, you know, when I moved to Canada, 2010, certainly compared with Japan, although at the time South Korea had really started to, you know, move out ahead in terms of its support for its games industry, and you can see what happened in Korea as a result of that government support. So, I mean, I think there's definitely a component there where, you know, fueling the network, and I think the most forward-looking jurisdictions were the ones that said, okay, actually, video games really are, you know, fertile breeding ground for innovation in general. And, you know, some places have taken that on more successfully than others. But, you know, I continue to really fully support that idea that without a healthy video game cluster, it's difficult to have a really true innovation cluster in your jurisdiction. So, you know, jury's still out as to whether British Columbia maintained its position in the world, I guess, but we'll see, you know. So, yeah, but I think just to go back to the question, I think that network of support from governments who have recognized the value of our industry is really, really key. And fortunately, ours continues to do that, which is why we're all here to meet you guys, right? So.
Thanks for that. Dennis, what would be helpful from you, because you run a studio, you're a founder of the studio, help me understand what's really next for you guys. Like, where are you going to next, and how are you navigating, you know, that growth or that stability? Like,
What stability?
Yeah. Adaptability.
Well, I think we're in the same boat as everyone else in the mobile industry and the gaming industry. What I'm looking towards is how can we continue playing the game. Staying afloat is the most important part, not even like praying for the next hit. Like, get as many swings at the plate as you can. Oh, that's a baseball analogy here in the UK.
Oh, we get it.
Oh, okay, you get it. All right.
We're good. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do is to create a stable base for us to continue developing our talents, trying to see what's happening in the international space as well, and also looking at new distribution models for games, because I think the industry is pretty mature right now. There are a lot of other places to explore where you may not make a whole lot of money right now. But there was a time when free-to-play was not what it is now, right? So can we get on that sooner? And can we draw from other places that have succeeded? You look at something like free-to-play has taken over the Western market in the mobile space, and that really built off of foundations that were in the East before that.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's right, like 2004 in Korea, in China. So where else can we look? We can't just look at the industry we have now. We have to see where people are playing games in other places, because as they grow and as their spending capacities grow, we got to be ready to adapt to that.
Yeah. Jacob, following exactly from that, where is Smoking Gun looking at to keep? I saw a little side mark. Yeah. So where are you guys moving into? What trends are you following, and what is inspiring you for the next steps as a studio the size that you are?
Yeah. So I would say that really, I don't know. Our business, because we really do kind of work for hire, right? So we're not really kind of going and growing new models at the moment. But what we do try to do is we, again, try to expand our business, our relationships, build new ones, and kind of build out on what we are specialized in, which is really kind of mobile end-to-end game development. So we're not really looking at expanding out to like VR or things like that, but we're always open to things. But
so it's sort of like keep in your lane and do great in your lane.
It's more of we have an area that we're really great at, and we want to create really great experiences in those. So that's what we focus on, is creating more of those, growing those, and getting new opportunities to have bigger mandates, bigger games, make bigger impacts in different genres. So
yeah, amazing.
Yeah, so it's more focusing on that, especially.
I think quality is important.
Okay.
I think that's what we're saying is the focus for Smoking Gun was always to make the highest quality products and making sure you're hitting those. And that's what opens the doors. That's what makes it easier to go out and sell, and is just focusing on, if you're going to do this particular game, just make it the best it can possibly be. Make it shine, and then hopefully good things come from that.
So, because you've moved from Smoking Gun, you have your own game, you're developing it into publishing. How are you taking a big team, moving to a small team, and still having that ethos of quality, but being retired?
Semi-retired.
Semi-retired.
It's tough. I wasn't a big fan of moving to a remote model myself. We didn't do that at Smoking Gun until COVID happened. I am a big believer in everybody being in the same room, and I think for me that's still important. Like, I think the key people, like James was saying, the key people have to be, I think, together, and it's really hard, especially if you're overseas. It's like if you can collaborate only 1 hour a day, and I don't know if anybody's done creative brainstorming sessions on Teams or Zoom, but it sucks. Yeah. You can't feel the energy in the room. You can't get, you can't get the vibe of everybody, and that's, I think, what creates amazing things is that. So, for Phobies, I think I have the core people that I need in order to do that still in Vancouver, and then when I'm looking to, the rest of the world, just to help. Make the business work and help meet the margins and stuff, collaborating with some people in Vietnam or collaborating with people in South America or even people over, in Europe. It's kind of, using that to augment, but for me, I still need that core team in one place because that's just me. I'm sure there's people out here who have remote studios that only ever do everything remotely, and I know that they're successful. That's just not me.
Yeah. James, you, like I said, you kind of experiment in many different ways. how do you see, like, what sort of trends are we looking at that we're drawing from different international markets that we can kind of keep an eye out and that can give some people either the edge or the adaptability to stay in this business?
Yeah, I think, that's a great question. And actually it ties back to sort of the previous one about, what's next and things like that. And, Dennis made the comment about free-to-play back in, 2004 and how much vitriolic hatred there was against it from Western developers for a period of time, which, personally speaking, I'm very bullish on Web3 gaming and actually Web3 in general. Way back in 2007, I was a contributing author to this thing called the Metaverse Roadmap, and we identified true digital ownership as kind of a key pillar of the future. So the parallel, I think, with free-to-play actually coming from the East, if you go look at companies like We Made and the way that they introduced Web3 components into more traditional gaming styles, and then you look at the effect of that on retention for things like Night Crows and Mir, the numbers are astounding because what they're doing is just legitimizing that time-honored trait that gamers wanted to do, whether we were investing in a character, and then in the old days you have to take the risk of selling it on the grey market, potentially getting ripped off, right? So it's a very different approach around Web3 and digital assets, I think. And in the same way that free-to-play came east to west, I think that adoption of Web3 will also come east to west. So that's an interesting one. But then last year I spent a lot of time working with a company called Aether on a deep-in GPU infrastructure play, so basically GPU as a service. And what I've noticed from that is if you can communitize something as boring as cloud computing, which Aether successfully has, so every one of those 3 million owners feels like a vested interest in the success of the network. And so if you take that idea of having a vested success in a vested ownership stake in something, if that's a game or if it's music publishing, whatever it is, I think that this sort of intersection of asset ownership and, am I a fan? And, I was very skeptical at the beginning because I thought that, the DeFi investors wouldn't really give a shit about the games. But actually, it's the same audience, which is, again, as an old guy, very interesting to see. So to me, I think, I really am bullish on blockchain Web3 if it's correctly implemented for all of these different reasons. But it creates this amazing kind of virtuous cycle of interest, ownership, interest, ownership, interest, ownership, which is, you can't really escape from it. So. And I think, a lot of that influence is coming from other markets, right? Probably have a slightly more relaxed attitude to regulation, but who knows what's happening in the US right now. So, yeah, I think, today is quite an important day for quite a lot of different, regulations around things like blockchain. So, yeah.
So kind of to summarize a little bit from what I'm hearing from you guys is that internationalization and collaboration is a necessity, both for business models and capacity. But it's driven and it's based on a strong core, the value of quality and expertise and niche, and then you can kind of go from there. Experience is always going to give that start small and then build out. Feel inspired by international markets and international teams, but keep to your core or develop your core. We have a couple of minutes. Does anybody have any comments or questions that they really want to tap into any of our experienced game developers here? No? Okay. Great. Thank you, Daisy.
Thank you.